You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health themes from cinema, television, and popular culture. I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a filmmaker and professor, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dr. Joshua Jones, who is on his own Odyssey to make fetch a thing, and he's also a general and forensic psychiatrist.
Yes, a little throwback, callback to an episode we did earlier. And Jeff, I do have to say, Odyssey has been big on my mind all week, because not only are we covering the Odyssey today, but my new mic is here and it has gone through its own Odyssey.
Yes.
For a whole
and you
month.
sound,
It's been
and
on
you
its
sound
way.
delicious.
And they had to pick it fresh off the microphone tree and send it to me. And it was quite the journey for it to get here. It is ready to lead us into this new podcast today.
Yes, indeed. All right. We want you to start your week off right with our podcast. So we drop a new episode some Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch our hottest and spiciest clips and full episodes on the YouTubes. Josh, today we are covering The Odyssey. This is the newest Christopher Nolan film. It's in theaters now. It is an adaptation of the original Homer epic poem, and it is about a man trying to get home after a 10-year war, and he takes an additional 10 years to get home, only to find that his house is overrun with suitors for his wife. Great movie. I loved this film, and I cannot wait to talk about, one, the mental health themes, but two, a lot of the controversy surrounding this film, and how much of it is warranted, how much of it makes sense. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the reaction to this film, and I'm excited to get into it. But give me the mental health topics we're going to talk about today.
Well, Jeff, first of all, I was surprised by this movie because it's a brand new story. I'd never heard of it before. It was incredible. The Odyssey is about an older brother's journey to try not to murder his younger brother. It's very, very difficult. Look, here are the mental health themes. There are so many. It was difficult to distill them down to the ones that are most important. But I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about cultural nuance and mental health, because I think that there are some things that we see in the Odyssey that aren't necessarily familiar to modern viewers. They may or may not have been Greek traditions, but they definitely do play into how the whole story evolves. And I think it gives us a little lesson into how much we have to pay attention to cultural nuance and mental health. So that's number one. Number two, Jeff, we're going to talk about sons and fathers. Sons and fathers is a thing. What is it about the son's longing to know his father, even if he's never met his father? Also a very real thing.
Yeah, Josh, I can't wait to get into that, because what I thought was so interesting in watching the story is, like, Telemachus really wanted to know Odysseus. And I was thinking about it. I was like, man, don't you have any sort of, like, feelings of, like, abandonment? And I was thinking about it. It's like, it was a different time. Where it was like just the people around Telemachus were probably talking so greatly about Odysseus. It's not the same sort of expectations that we have today as we did back then. So it's believable that Telemachus just wants to know his dad, and he believes these stories about his dad, and so isn't angry at his dad. I thought that was really, really interesting. I don't mean to dive right into that topic, but he
actually was angry at his dad. You may not have seen it on screen, but it was definitely there. It probably came out afterwards. This is a movie, but there's no way that occurs, and there's not some anger at the father.
That's fair. And I didn't mean to dive into that topic.
Yeah, but
let's
anger.
Save it for
there's anger at fathers who are present, and that's all very important. And then finally, the biggest topic, and one that has been written about so much, and really what this movie is about, is the soldier's journey home.
Sure.
War has been part of the human experience since before we could write about it. But the universal experience of the soldier journeying to war, experiencing war, and then trying to come home was first put down in writing by Homer, and I don't think anybody's done it better since. And that's why we keep coming back to the Odyssey.
Do you think that's true, that was really the first story of a soldier returning home?
Put down on paper, probably.
Yeah, fair enough.
If it's not, it's the one that has persisted.
Yeah, fair enough. It's the one that's the most in the zeitgeist. Okay, Josh, I love that. I also really want to talk a lot about ego. And you're going to see why here in a second when we talk about theme, because as always, we're going to start with the theme of the film as sort of the jumping off point. So what I thought was really fascinating about the movie, Josh, is that it has a very different theme from the original Homeric poem. The original theme of the Odyssey is about ego and self-restraint. There was a lot of hullabaloo about the historical inaccuracies and the narrative inaccuracies of this film. And to those critics, I want to say, one, I had no idea there were so many Homeric experts in the United States. I really had no idea that many people felt so strongly about their classic that they're constantly reading. I didn't know.
Jeff, you can't spell America without Homer.
Homer, that is true, Josh. I mean, look, Homer's been in our lives for the past 25 years. No! So the second, I know, that was a bad joke. The second thing when it comes to theme, changing a story to make it fit the needs of the time is the point of adaptation. And so not having the same theme as the original is okay because we tell stories to talk about the issues of the time. Back in the day, it made sense for this to be about ego and self-restraint because life was a lot about not upsetting the gods. So there were a lot of stories about not upsetting the gods. And so in the original story, Odysseus builds the Trojan horse, thinks he's the man, thinks he's smarter than the gods, and in order to get home, he has to master self-restraint. And so the theme is glory and gluttony, there's L's in those words, aren't as important as family, as your home, okay? And we see this through all of the stories. He tells Polyphemus his name because he can't resist claiming credit for the victory over the Cyclops. He has to be physically restrained from the sirens because he wants to be the only person who's heard their song and has lived to tell about it. He remains with Circe and Calypso, enjoying certain forms of comfort, sex, and even potential immortality that threaten his responsibilities. His men repeatedly fail because they can't control their hunger, fear, greed, curiosity. And then when he gets home, the suitors are the ultimate image of people without this self-mastery. They consume this man's household, and so that's why, they're killed. Odysseus finally becomes worthy of becoming home when he learns restraint. When he returns as a beggar, he endures the insults, conceals his identity, suppresses his anger, and waits for the moment to act. And the younger Odysseus couldn't have done that. And so a theme is always you see a change in a character. He's changed from being all about ego and all about, the comforts to being a much more restrained man. That's an amazing theme. It's a great theme for the time.
Exactly. I mean, all the Greek myths, Jeff, their theme was to teach people to subjugate, to push down your ego in the face of the gods, to not offend the gods. And what were the gods? The gods were anthropomorphized or humanized examples of nature, of natural phenomenon. So the Greek myths were all about, hey, try not to get so full of yourself, otherwise the nature's going to smack you down.
Don't get so full of yourself you think you can roll through that storm.
Exactly.
And so that made sense for the time. Okay,
exactly.
So we don't necessarily, we do need that theme. That theme is always important, but there's a different theme for this Odyssey. And I thought it was profound. The theme they don't really state until the end of the movie, when he talks about how he broke Zeus's law in a way that broke it for the world.
Yes.
So this was a movie about a man who believed he broke the world and felt too ashamed to come home. And when he gives a gift of peace to the Trojans and then betrays that peace, he broke the one immutable law of the world. Treat everyone who comes to your home as if they were Zeus himself. And because of that, the Greeks who returned home spread that treachery. There's the stories of the sea people. And so he broke Zeus's law, and it's can you come home after you've broken that tenet. This is essentially dealing with our issues of immigration and loving our neighbor. This is a love your neighbor story, and how Zeus's law, if people had followed it, and how we lost it, but how Zeus's law was the best way to live, which is to love your neighbor and bring them into your home as if they were Zeus himself, and the shame that he felt for not living up to that. I thought that was an amazing theme and a really good adaptation of theme.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I completely agree. They talk about, he even says it was a little bit too on point because they of course didn't call it the Bronze Age back when they were in the Bronze Age, but he said, "Hey, we're ending the Bronze Age." I mean, it is true that after the fall of Troy, that was really kind of the beginning of the fall of the dominance of the Greeks.
Right.
And it was probably due very much, well, it was due to a lot of things, of course, but it was due very much to the fact that they stopped loving thy neighbor as themselves. And I think your point is that what we're doing today? I think a lot of people would say, yes, that's what we're doing today. We are not treating everybody else in the world as though they are our neighbors, even though they absolutely are. We are in an increasingly small planet. Yep. We are in what we are recognizing is an increasingly fragile planet. And that if we don't, listen to Zeus's law, God's law. I mean, it's in the Christian mythos as well, right? If we don't treat each other as we want to be treated, follow the golden rule or even the platinum rule, treat each other as they want to be treated, we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah. And, you and I talk about that a lot. We've talked about the golden rule and the platinum rule. We haven't talked about it as much lately. So I do like that this is kind of getting us back to it. It's really important. And for everybody just criticizing, oh, it's not the original Odyssey. It's not supposed to be. That's the point of an adaptation. This isn't a translation, and we'll get into translation, later. But people are allowed to adapt these stories, and we're supposed to adapt these stories. And I thought he crushed it. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, I think the criticism that it doesn't stay enough to the source material is just, I'm sorry, I'm just going to call it out. It's just stupid. The adaptations are adaptations. The theme that you're talking about, Jeff, is also not the theme of the original Homeric work. I mean, it's in there. You can have more than one theme, especially in something, called an epic poem. So it's part and parcel of that. It is also, there is a sub-theme in here, which is to subjugate your ego, to become more humble.
Ego is still a big part of this. There's no doubt.
And ego is a giant part of loving your neighbor. You have to be able to see the other as yourself as well. You have to see worth. You have to see value. You have to not vilify those who are different than you. And one way you do that is by recognizing that you are not the be-all, end-all of existence.
Yeah, and it's great you mentioned kind of sub-theme there, Josh, because the flip side of his guilt is the fact that everybody in the world is singing the song of his praise. And so imagine that battle internally where you think you broke the world and everybody else thinks you're a hero. And I thought they did a great job with that.
Yeah.
I thought Matt Damon, I criticized the casting choice of Matt Damon, before I saw the movie. Because I don't think Ray Fiennes was a great choice. There was a recent Odyssey movie with Ray Fiennes. I thought he was a great choice for Odysseus. I didn't see Matt Damon in this. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job. I too wondered how Mark Watney was going to science the shit out of returning to Ithaca, but he did an absolutely great job in that.
It's just another movie where Matt Damon tries to get home. Poor guy. Constantly just trying to get home. Stuck out in space in Interstellar, stuck out in space in The Martian,
stuck
trying
in World War II,
Odyssey,
stuck in World War II and Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
He just gets stuck.
Just trying to get home. Poor dude. Let's just get Matt Damon home, shall we? All right. So, Josh, let's talk a little bit about, do you want to talk more about some of the criticisms of the film, or do you want to jump into some of the mental health?
No, let's talk about more of the criticisms of the film, because I just think they're exhausting to me. They're exhausting. There's some casting criticisms. Oh, I want to get her name right. How do you pronounce?
Let me get into the casting criticisms.
Okay.
Because I have two things to say about the casting criticisms. Most of the casting criticism was about the wokeness of the film. And so there were two main casting criticisms. There was Elliot Page and Lupita Nyong'o. This was such a masterclass by Nolan in one of the great tenets, I think, in The Art of War, which is if your enemies are making a mistake, don't interrupt them. And so the controversy around Elliot Page was everybody thinking that he was playing Achilles. And I thought it was really fascinating that you get to the movie and it's like, no, Elliot Page was not playing Achilles. He was actually playing a character from the Aeneid who they crossed over to the Odyssey. That character is not in the Odyssey, but Nolan thought it was a really important character and a really interesting character to bring into the film, and I had no issues with it. I loved Elliot Page and his performance in this. But it got me thinking, why didn't they correct the record? When there was all of this hullabaloo about it, why didn't they correct the record? Because they knew eventually all of those people would be made to look stupid. And so why correct them if they're making a mistake? Because if you correct them, they're just going to find something else to complain about. And as soon as you correct them, you sort of legitimize them because you give them your voice. You give them your time. And so now you're on their level with them. And Nolan is just like, nope, I'm above all of that. I know you guys are wrong. I'm not going to talk to you. You're not worthy of being talked to. Man, I thought that was brilliant on Nolan's part to just not engage with how wrong they were.
Jeff, it's actually a leadership behavior that I teach and I model for some of the earlier career physicians that I mentor, is about not expending political capital when you don't have to. Look, not everything is a transaction, right? And certainly we want to be in teams, and in healthcare, we really try to work in teams. Mm-hmm. But if you see something that it's not going to harm people, but it's going to fall apart on its own,
right?
You have to make a calculation. Do you want to expend any political capital to help that move along faster or to help it move along at all when it's going to fall apart and it's going to come to the ultimate conclusion and not be an issue? And my lesson to folks is, hey, if it's not going to hurt anybody, stand back. Right. Let it happen. Focus on the finite number of things that you can focus on and you can control, because if the outcome's going to be the same and it's not going to hurt anybody, then just let it play out. And I agree. That's exactly what happened here. I thought it was masterful.
Yep. Yeah. And then the other big casting controversy, and this one is just, wow. I do know what to say about this because I wrote something for it. But this one is just, it's so blatantly racist. But people having an issue with the casting of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy. And a lot of it was like, Helen was supposed to be beautiful. Okay, well, Lupita is, oh my God, beautiful. So I just don't think that you can find black people beautiful. To me, I think you're probably racist. You should look at that. But the criticism was no way that she would have been black. Okay, I hear that. Matt Damon is Finnish and Swedish and looks nothing like a Greek. So why don't we have a problem with Matt Damon playing Odysseus? Why aren't we bringing that same energy to that? He would not have looked like Odysseus. That one on its face, just I can't stand. But here's where I thought, Josh, the casting of Lupita was actually brilliant and necessary, okay? Go with me on this. Clytemnestra, which she also played, by the way. She played both Clytemnestra and Helen. Clytemnestra and Helen were slaves. They were slaves to their husbands. One of them had their daughter taken and murdered so that Agamemnon would have wins. Helen of Troy tried to run away and was brought back and punished for it. They sliced up half of her face. These women were slaves. And I think that the best person to play that is someone who can identify with the generational trauma of slavery. And so I thought Lupita was an amazing choice. She was an incredible choice. And she made more sense to me than having, a white person who doesn't have that sort of generational trauma people have suffered. So I thought that the casting actually, if you think about it, on a deeper level, it made sense to cast somebody like Lupita.
And you're suggesting that Christopher Nolan thinks on a deeper level.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I mean, I can't disagree with your take at all. I just can't look past the blatant racism of the criticism. I mean, she's a fantastic actress. The Greeks were the crossroads of the world. It was not, what we would call a multiracial democracy by any means. There were definitely classes. There were absolutely slaves, etc. I don't know. I just looked at that and just waved it off as that is just blatantly racist. I agree. It's great to talk about. It's great to say, hey, this is kind of why that choice was made. I think that's a great take.
Yep.
Jeff, while we're on Helen for just a second.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, so Helen was the face that launched 1,000 ships.
Yeah.
Do you know what a millihelen is?
A face that launched a ship?
Yes, it's the amount of beauty necessary to launch just one ship.
Do you think either of us are a millihelen, Josh?
So, Jeff, the next topic I want to talk about.
Hey, you're the one that brought it up. I was just trying to yes and you. My last point about Lupita, Josh, and then I want to move on from this, but my last point is just who the fuck cares? You know, this is one of those things where the people on the right, I'm just like, why? Why is this something that you choose to care about? And I obviously know it's like because they're fucking racist. But like, aren't you the guys who are saying everything needs to be colorblind? You know, so if we want things to be colorblind,
they're not. They want to. They want you to take all color out, so everything is white, Jeff.
No, I know. Let's talk about the last criticism. This is different from the criticism of the casting. Let's talk about the historical accuracy part of it. You know, critics of the historical accuracy. I would rather have Agamemnon's badass Batman costume,
right,
than be historically accurate. Let the greats see what was done in the past and make the past even better. This was not Gladiator. This was not a movie that was trying to be set in a real event. This was imagination. This didn't really happen. And so we can take some license with how things looked at the time. One of Nolan's decisions that I thought was brilliant was to make the Cyclops' face actually our face, but mangled.
Yeah.
And so he didn't just have one eye, he just had one eye that worked, and his other eye was in like a different spot. But I was like, the mangled face of the Cyclops was such an interesting choice. You know, and so those are the parts of adaptation where I'm like, God damn, like Nolan's taking this to a different level.
Correct.
Was it accurate? I don't care. It was fucking cool.
Yeah. Again, I can't disagree with you on any of this. I thought those criticisms were dumb. I mean, you know, Benny Safdie's performance of Agamemnon, basically inside a Darth Vader or a Batman costume, was perfect for what it needed to be. And that costume was absolutely what it needed to be. It needed to set him apart and above from everybody. And it did. And then when it was shed, when he was down to a man, that's when he died. And that was absolutely perfect. So I don't know what people are going on about. I mean, I texted you as I got out of that movie. And of course I've got recency bias and I love jumping on bandwagons and everything. But I texted you and said, there's a chance this is the best movie ever made so far.
Yeah.
It is really amazing. Jeff, and another thing that I absolutely loved about this movie is that aside from a couple points where they 100% wanted you to know that it had to be CGI, like the Scylla and Charybdis scene.
Right.
Everything else was mostly practical effects.
Oh, using forced perspective and just the sound effects to make the Cyclops was awesome. Awesome. You believe that that's a real like giant because it was a real person. It was just a real person using forced perspective and probably green screen and just having two sort of images laid on top of each other. It's simple, but it's beautiful. And that will stand the test of time because it was real. You know, by the way, sitting outside of the Universal City Walk AMC was a Trojan horse that they used in the movie.
No kidding.
Yeah. And it was fucking cool.
Yeah, I bet it was cool.
It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this movie's going to stand the test of time for sure.
One of my only criticisms, by the way, Josh, of the movie had to do with Agamemnon because I loved his look so much. And I loved that, like, for the most of the movie, he just didn't talk. He just was a presence. And I thought they kind of gutted him a little when they met him in Hades and he recounts the story. And I think that he could have just shown up and then they flash back to his return home and he kind of got killed. I don't think they needed to have him talk there. And I think it would have been stronger if he'd have just stayed this like massive character. Yeah, I didn't want him to talk. And then when they talk, I felt like it changed it a little bit for me. But again, whatever. He was awesome. And that's it's not even a criticism. It's just something I would have done differently.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't have any problem with that. And I felt the fact that there's this hopelessness, this desperation that comes from being in hell, right? And that's what the whole thing portrayed. And I think it was almost pleading. It was pleading. You're in hell, you're defeated, you're dead. Yeah. So I didn't have a problem with that. My biggest problem with the movie, and again, this is tiny things, is I did not like how the Telemachus character, played by Tom Holland, some of his dialogue was written. I didn't like how he called his mother and father mom and dad. I just thought that was so out of place. It was jarring to me. And maybe that was the point, because he was made out to be, he had to grow into be the king. I don't know if he actually ever did grow into be the king. He's still Tom Holland.
It's funny.
He's still Peter Parker, but
it's funny. You had texted me, I think, in advance that like you just didn't love Tom Holland's performance. Not that you didn't like it, you just didn't love it the way that you did others. And I actually didn't have a problem with it, because I think he just played it honestly like a kid.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good choice. Like one of my issues with like going back and watching Troy, with Brad Pitt and the voice of McDonald's, Brian Cox, is everybody just has that like, Agamemnon, king of kings, tonight we shall dine in Troy, ha ha. And it's like, it's so been played out. It's over the top for whatever reason. Like we all think that's the way they talk. There was a scene in the Odyssey where Matt Damon's kind of laying on the bed and Anne Hathaway is on his back, and he's just like, "Yeah, man, Agamemnon's doing this for trade routes and fucking blah blah," and you can barely hear what they're talking about. And it's like, man, if any other director had done that, it would be, "Listen, wife, Agamemnon wants his trade routes, and we must bow to Athena and give him what he wants and placate this great king." And it's like, no, that's not how people talk. So I thought Tom just kind of playing it like a kid was a really great choice. He actually talked about the mom and dad thing in an interview.
Oh, really?
That was his answer.
Those are all good points. I thought that the scene you're talking about where Matt Damon and Anne Hathaway are having the pillow talk about, why is he going off to war? I too thought that was a fabulous scene. It just set it up as these are real people in unreal situations. It is very much the kind of conversation that a soldier and their spouse have before the soldier goes off to war.
Yeah.
Absolutely is.
Yeah. That feeling of duty. I loved what they did with the draft. That Odysseus is.
Sure.
That I think I had the draft.
Sure.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of this movie that I loved. Okay, this is sort of a segment in its own right, Josh, but we have to talk, if we're going to talk about critics of the film and criticism, especially the narrative structure, we have to talk about the drama that happened with Emily Wilson. Do you know anything about this?
I don't know anything about this.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're going to get a kick out of this. So Emily Wilson translated, I think, the 2017 translation of the Odyssey.
Okay.
And Nolan credits that translation for being an inspiration for his version. Emily Wilson did not like the Odyssey. In fact,
the movie.
In fact, she hated it.
Okay.
So I'm going to read you her criticism. So she said, it lacks psychological, emotional, political, and ethical depth. Its narrative structure is gimmicky. The writing is abysmal. None of the characters has convincing motivation for their actions or words. There are no sex scenes, and all the food looks horrible. She goes on, I would be ashamed to have written any part of this script. That is coming from the translator.
Holy moly.
Yeah. I will say this, because I don't want to crap on Emily. She's entitled to her opinion. This somehow became really big news. Emily Wilson didn't write the Odyssey. She translated it. Translation is not adaptation. It's a different metric. And I think that we should care about Emily Wilson's opinion as much as we care about yours and mine. And sort of no more. But it's been in every media outlet that she hated this movie. Guys, she didn't write it. Okay? This wasn't something that she wrote. Translators have a different metric than people who are adapting stories. I'm not going to get into her specific criticism because everybody's entitled to their opinion. Okay? I will say this. The structure of the Odyssey was gimmicky. You start at the middle, you go back, and then you go forward. That was, the very structure of Homer's Odyssey was gimmicky. And second, and this is really important, it's a little bit screenwritery. Films and books are different mediums. The depth that you're looking for can often be found in the visuals, in the way he plucks a bow or hesitates to pluck the bow. The way that words land on his face and he responds and acts to those words. A lot of that depth that you're looking for is in the performance, is in the nuance of the way that something is directed. And so I'm not saying that Emily Wilson's opinion is wrong, but what I would say is books are a different medium than film. And my last point about Emily and anybody who walked in and hated this movie, if you hated this movie, I just can't take you seriously. You cannot love this movie as much as someone else, but this was an achievement. This was a cinematic achievement.
Yes.
And it's okay if you didn't like it. But to go so far as to say I would be ashamed to have written any part of this script, Emily, that's too much. That's too far. That's just too far.
I want to go see this movie again in the theater. I cannot tell you the last time I had that feeling.
Yeah, and I agree. This time I'm going to wear earplugs.
Okay, Mom.
Wow, it was loud. But do you have anything to say about just kind of the narrative, criticisms?
I don't.
And specifically about like this notion that we either have to love something or hate something.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that just comes from the I hate to use this word, but from the bipolar nature of our time. You have to be so far on one side of things, and it's to be heard. I don't know anything about Emily Wilson, so I won't comment on that. But if you want any kind of capital in our attention capital world,
right,
you have to say something so dramatic or do something so dramatic that it gets clicks and likes and follows, and that's the world we live in. So you have to be so far on one side of things. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like that we're living in this attention economy at all while you and I are trying to get likes and listens on the pod. I understand the hypocrisy of that, but yeah, that's weird. You don't have to love or hate something. You can be middle of the road about things. In fact, we all need to be middle of the road about most things.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to come to compromise. That's how we're going to move forward. So
yeah,
if you didn't love this movie, I'm not going to go so far as to say if you hated this movie, I don't have any place for you. I think that plays into the extreme bipolar nature of our times.
No, I said I can't take you seriously.
I can't.
And I don't think that, and I don't think that's unfair, Josh.
Okay, I'm not going to say that. I mean, if you want to hate it, you must have your reasons. I think if we have an honest conversation about it, you probably don't hate it as much as you think you do.
Right.
You're hating it for some other secondary gain reason because this is objectively a fabulous movie.
Yeah, agreed. And it's just like the work that went into it, the locations that they got, the way that it's shot. I don't think anybody who hated the narrative structure is going to say it was an ugly film.
Right.
And so it's like we have to at least just be like, yeah, it was a visual. I mean, yeah, the visuals were cool. Okay, well, let's lead with that. Like we have a rule in screenwriting, at least as part of my writers group, that it's like you always start with the positive because those are the things to build on. Like everything can have some criticism.
Sure.
But you need to tell someone like, hey, this is what's working so that you can build on what's working. And I think that we need more of that sort of conversation in our society. Yeah. Start with the good.
You can knock anything down. It's actually really easy.
Yeah. Emily Wilson does say at the end of her interview, though, I expected to sell 1,000 copies of my translation. And now the movie's come out, I've sold more than 1 million because people are interested in Homer's Odyssey. And that as well speaks to the importance of adaptation, because people will be curious about what's the original and they'll compare and they'll go back and they'll appreciate these things in a new way. You can't just sit there and tell people, hey, you have to appreciate this because it's old. Like this is what brings people to appreciate some ancient text,
right?
Is to adapt it in these ways.
Sure.
And I thought that they did stick to the ego theme pretty well.
There are going to be more people who read other Greek myths and epic
Yes.
poems other than the Odyssey because of the Odyssey than
That's right.
anything else that has happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And I want
So
Agamemnon's-
saith Josh.
And I want Agamemnon's armor as my Halloween costume this year.
I think you should. You would wear it well.
There you go. All right, Josh, we haven't talked at all about anything mental health wise. Talk to me about the soldier's journey.
Oh, Jeff. So this is actually a really powerful topic for me because, as you know, I was a soldier. I was a psychiatrist in the Army. I went off to war in Iraq and then had to come back. I am in no way saying that my journey was as difficult or even half as difficult as many of the soldiers who I treated and worked with, etc. Soldiers will do that. We'll just kind of downplay our own contributions.
So you didn't spend 7 years fucking Charlize Theron on a beach before you came home?
Soldier, I salute you. If Jeff, we all have our duties. We all have our parts to play. And if that's the role that you have, if that's your mission, Godspeed, soldier.
That was one of my favorite parts that you and I kind of joked about with the Odyssey. Was like, oh, sweetie, I just feel really bad that I like built this horse, and that's like the thing I feel the most bad about. And it's like, oh yeah, what were you doing the last 7 years? What?
Huh? What's that?
What? Huh?
What's that? Yeah.
No, don't even worry about it.
Yeah. Penelope and Odysseus as they're sailing off into their exile. Oh, thank you for regaling me, my dear Lord Odysseus, with your stories. But I'm adding up the time, and it sounds like you were about 3 years at sea. What'd you do with the other 7 years?
What?
Might have been a little longer in the Cyclops cave. I mean, it's hard to tell.
It's really hard. What does time even mean when you're at sea?
Don't
worry about it,
deal
sweetie.
with gods and hell and whirlpools, and I don't know.
All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail you.
I think it is a very easy way to talk about Odysseus's journey as an allegory for post-traumatic stress disorder,
Sure,
and the difficulty that a soldier has when they return home. Okay. So when we look at the Odyssey, there's a stark truth that stares back at us. Okay. Humanity didn't invent PTSD in the 20th century. We just gave it a clinical name. 3,000 years ago, Homer called it the Odyssey, or a journey home. And
can I ask you a quick question, Josh, about
Yeah.
that? Do you think it's fair to say that war in the Bronze Age or in the Classical Age or any type, do you think it might have lent itself to being harder because we didn't have like the medicine that we have today, and we didn't have some of the technological advantages? I mean, you were watching friends die of sepsis right in front of you. Do you think it was harder, or do you think that because then modern warfare got so vicious that they're just not comparable?
I think they're comparable, Jeff. I think war is war.
Okay.
You're taking someone else's life. You're trying to destroy their whole civilization. In the Bronze Age, there was a lot of hand-to-hand combat. You were up close and personal. Nowadays, you're further away, but the weapons are more devastating. You're not just dealing with stab wounds and speared through and things like that. You're dealing with mangled, destroyed, blown up, eviscerated, misted bodies.
Yeah.
So war is war. Period. End of story.
What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say that again.
Okay. All right. But getting back to the soldier's journey home, even when you and I were growing up, when we read the Odyssey, and I remember there was
Which we did, because everyone in America has committed to memory, apparently.
Well, look, I remember. I mean,
When we saw
remember this
Kirk
too.
Gibson's version of the movie, let's be honest.
Kirk Gibson's version of the movie.
Yeah.
When he
No,
hit the
Kirk
home run?
Douglas. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Gibson was a baseball player.
Yeah.
Did not. He actually did it for his hometown crowd. Josh, don't even worry about it. I didn't misspeak. Yeah.
But look, we saw this high seas adventure story full of gods and monsters and magic. But if you look at it through the lens of psychological trauma, which I do,
Yeah.
the
What we're here
monsters the monsters, they stop being fantasy and they start looking like symptoms. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So think about this. The island of the Lotus Eaters, where Odysseus spent time with Charlize Theron, It's not just a quirky pit stop. It's the classic trauma response of avoidance and numbing for years. It's the veteran using substances or sex to quiet the noise, desperate to erase the terrible weight of what they've seen. Circe turning men into swine, that is the crushing reality of moral injury. Watching honorable men who lose their humanity under the brutalizing pressure of combat, becoming unrecognizable to themselves.
Yeah.
And the sirens? That's intrusive memories, man. That haunting, irresistible pull to relive the devastation tied to the mast of your own mind, unable to block out the voices of the dead. Even though it's this beautiful, haunting song, and a lot of, intrusive memories can be about things that were both a mixture of.
So it's replaying the awful parts of war. In your mind. Okay.
Yeah, which is a core symptom of PTSD, man. These intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, nightmares.
Yeah.
What Nolan captures so masterfully in the Odyssey is that true war doesn't end at the gates of Troy, doesn't end with the sacking of Troy. The hardest leg of his voyage begins when the fighting stops. When Matt Damon washes ashore in Ithaca, he doesn't look like a victorious king. He is haggard, depleted, hypervigilant, and functionally hollowed out by 10 years of survival mode. Actually 20, because the war was 10. He's a stranger in his own home, standing in his own hall while feeling miles away from the people who love him. When I came back from Iraq, I read Odysseus in America, which is Jonathan Shea's fabulous book about how combat alters the nervous system so profoundly that coming home isn't a single geographic arrival. It is a painstaking process of psychological reintegration that can last years, Jeff, or even a lifetime.
That makes me so much more impressed with Homer. Because it really feels like he nailed the feeling of coming home from war. And what's so fascinating is you're saying, and I believe you, is you're saying that is such a universal experience that it has lasted thousands and thousands of years, and we're still having those same experiences.
Correct, Jeff. The tragic core of the Odyssey is that you can survive the war, slay the monsters, and outrun the gods. But you cannot outrun who war made you into unless you actively do the work to heal. Cinema keeps dragging Odysseus back to our screens because his story remains the ultimate allegory for our veterans and trauma survivors. The war may last a decade, but the journey back to yourself might take the rest of your life.
I love that, Josh. I love that. It's so well said. And it just it speaks to my love of theme and how if you really understand theme, you can tell a great story and you can extract the parts that mean something to us universally. And then that's what's great about theme is that themes are universal truths or beliefs about the human experience. We haven't changed. I've told this story before. I teach a class in science fiction, and I have kids just come up with wild stories on the fly. And somebody was like, well, what ifs? I have them come up with what ifs on the fly. And one kid came up with, what if there was just a black hole in the universe that light didn't go through, and it was just a straight up, just nothing existed. And I was like, what would we do? And they were like, well, we'd probably send a probe into it and we'd circle around it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, what do you think cavemen did when they first found a mushroom? They poked it with a stick. They circled around it. Eventually somebody licked it and either, saw God or died. We don't change. Our curiosity hasn't changed. We have remained the same people, not exactly the same, but very much the same since we are cavemen. And I love that. And when you can really understand theme, that's when you can pull these things out, and start to have then the kind of empathy that I think we need to make us better people.
Well, even
what
the
do
way,
we do?
even the
What do
way,
we do now with this though, Josh? Because I love that, but he crushed it. He crushed the soldier's journey home. Is the takeaway then from this to have empathy for those who have gone through the struggle and look at the struggle in the Odyssey and realize that when people come home, that's just the beginning.
It is. I think the other lesson is to understand that war has really not changed. We have really sanitized the war. There are far fewer Americans who enter the military than there ever have before, even though we are, currently fighting a war. You cannot call it a war. You can call it an incursion. You can fight over whether the president's got authority to send the troops or whether Congress should. But you have men and women who are fighting and who are dying and who are being injured and who are killing others. They are at war.
Yeah.
And what we do with this information is that we try to put it in front of our faces and realize war is still here, we are still fighting, and there is still trauma occurring. So let's do our damnedest not to vilify the other so that we can try to survive together.
Yeah. And it really is sad how, we've gotten to the point where we have our leaders just talking about deaths as if they're nothing. And it's like someone had to do the killing, and the person who does the killing, they are forever changed.
They are.
I fully believe that. I mean, we have an uncle who's a cop. Our uncle never killed anybody, but he tells a great story about he saved a kid's life who was a jumper. And, he grabbed onto the kid and pulled him back. He was just in the position at the time. And he still thinks about that moment. He has PTSD about that moment. And it wasn't even about killing somebody. It was just about, what if he accidentally pushed him? What if he couldn't hold the kid? And what if the kid fell? And he flashes back to those moments. And it's like, it seems like such just kind of day in the life. And, we'll see these things in procedurals. We'll see cops do these things in procedurals and be fine. And it's like, that's just not the human experience. The human experience is when we go through these things that aren't just kind of part of our day-to-day, we have traumatic responses to them.
Correct.
And to be empathetic to those traumatic responses is, I think, one of the duties of humanity.
Yeah, completely agree. There's a great classic military book that I've mentioned on the podcast before called On Killing, written by a soldier, an officer.
I read it. I read it at your behest. It was amazing.
It's amazing, and it talks about how difficult it is to kill. It talks about how much you have to overcome your base human desire to protect the other human life to kill someone.
Right.
It is very compelling, but to kill someone, it leaves you changed.
Right.
And I really liked how they didn't show us the actual battle in Troy until the very end, because that's how it would play out for a soldier who is doing work to talk about their PTSD. They're going to re-experience it towards the end, towards the healing part of their journey. It looks like you didn't love that.
No, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Okay.
I completely agree with you. What bothers me is that people hated the Odyssey before it even came out, before they even saw it. People had their kind of minds made up about it. And, and so people enter into watching the movie with that in mind. You missed a fantastic thematic story where he's walking around. And it's like, I've heard the story, Josh, of the Iliad quite a few times. There's been movies about it. There was the movie Troy. I actually had to read the Iliad as part of an ancient philosophy class in college. I never thought about the guilt he must feel about inventing the weapon that ended so many lives. Which, by the way, Christopher Nolan is obviously in his, a man invents a weapon that ends a war phase.
Yes.
But I never thought about that. And so, having Matt Damon standing among the fire, the burning of Troy, while everybody else is so happy because they've been at war for 10 years. They've been hating for 10 years, and they're finally through, and they can see the end of their war, and they can see the person who has personified their hatred. And Matt Damon is looking at all of this and this is wrong, guy.
Yeah.
That was so brilliant. And if you walked into this ready to hate this movie, you missed it. And it's just, to me, it's a shame. It's a shame. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying you missed something pretty profound that you might have been able to see if you hadn't been so set about hating this movie.
Jeff, Odysseus was the Oppenheimer of his time.
Yeah.
He was the Oppenhomer.
Let's say that again.
He was the Oppenhomer.
The Oppenhomer. All right. It's good stuff. I appreciate when you can add some levity to So I know you, sometimes it drives you nuts that I bring levity into when you're talking seriously. So like when I get super passionate, I love that you could bring me back to reality.
Snatch that away.
Exactly. Oh, good stuff. All right. Do you want to talk about sons and fathers a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, yes, I want to talk about sons and fathers. Look, the relationship, the dynamic between Odysseus and Telemachus, there's been a lot written about it over the years.
Yep.
Odysseus is the ultimate absent father. He is literally absent from almost the time that Telemachus is born until he becomes a man.
Yeah, it's fair to say that Telemachus,
happens.
as a baby, didn't really know him. He was too young to even know his father.
Absolutely.
Right.
As I have grown, both as a man and as a father and as a psychiatrist, I am more and more convinced that the dynamic between a father and a son is so important. I'm not going to say that it is more important than the dynamic between mother and daughter. It is different, but it is qualitatively different.
Sure.
I'm not going to say that it's more important than father to daughter or mother to son.
Yeah.
But there is something as a man that it speaks to. There is this drive, this longing, this burden even to know your father. And
Right.
it truly is a biologic and psychologic search for context. You are trying to ground your identity in both nature and nurture, to know what created you. Evolutionarily, lineage recognition provided for tribal safety, resource access, nervous system regulation, while psychologically, a father serves as a primary mirror through social learning theory. Okay. And by seeking to understand your father's temperaments, flaws, and triumphs, you as a son gather the missing pieces of your own blueprint, and you strive for the paternal validation that allows you to integrate your past, make sense of who you are, and chart your own path forward. What that all means, Jeff, is that Telemachus was a ship without a rudder. And he developed in a way, and sons without fathers develop in ways that are both resilient but longing, that are both strong but missing pieces of that foundation.
And is it safe to say that if there isn't the dad there, kids are going to find other places to fill in those pieces?
They're going to try.
Right.
They're going to try.
But they'll never quite get there until they know their dad.
Yeah, I think that's the point. And don't mistake me. You are going to be profoundly disappointed by your father at times in your life.
Yeah.
But this is the true journey. In fact, it is almost a parallel for the Odyssey in the hero's journey, right? Your father, when you are young as a son, is a god.
Yeah.
And then when you become a teen, they can do nothing right. They are dumb, they are old, they are weak, they are stupid. And then when you become a man, your father becomes wise yet again.
Yeah. You know what's so fascinating about that, Josh? Because I don't disagree with you at all. But you know what's just fascinating about that? Dad was my best friend up until I was like 18. I mean, we called each other our best friend. Like, we just had a really, really close relationship. And I didn't have that typical sort of break that you have. I did with mom. I had a massive break with mom. But I didn't with dad. And a huge part of it, which, I'm going to take into sort of my adulthood, was dad was very hands off, and he told me, he's like, you're a good kid. You got a good head on your shoulders. I'm going to stop kind of dadding you. And if you need my opinion, then I'll be here for it. But other than that, I'm not going to try and like dad you. They gave me a lot of leeway. They were like, just be honest with us and then you can kind of do what you want. And it was like, I didn't have any reason. They didn't give me a reason to kind of hate them. And I thought that was really interesting, where it's like, maybe that is the key, for parents, is, you got to give your kids the space that they're going to take anyway. I don't know.
I think mom and dad actually knew how to do that with us pretty well. Give us the space that we were going to take and just be there. I didn't have that same relationship with dad.
But you were the first kid. You were the first kid.
Well, also dad got sick. Dad got sick when I was in 7th grade, and we all thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
Which
was a real dick move on his part.
To not die, or
no, to just like put us through that fucking stress for 20 years.
Yeah. And then he just So I mourned Dad before he died, and then he didn't die, and then he kept not dying, and he kept not dying, and the relationship changed and was broken after that. But yeah, up until I was 7th grade, Dad was my best friend.
Yeah.
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 Look, Dad wasn't a perfect guy. Don't get me wrong. Anybody out there who knew Larry knew that he had his quirks.
He did.
Boy, did he have his quirks, but he was a good dad.
One of my favorite memories of Dad was I was in the 6th grade, and it was a sergeant's class, and I'm sitting there, and the doors open to the classroom, and down the hall you hear, whoa, and everybody in the room was like, "That's just Dad, that's just Dad, that's just Dad." Man, the more I age, the more I'm like, having a distinctive laugh is fucking cool. To just know that's Larry Jones and he's having a good time. Dad's laugh made everybody feel good because it was embarrassing, but you had to smile. You had to smile when Dad laughed. That was awesome. What a gift to give to the world.
Well, we both got Dad's laugh, so.
I know. And I just embrace it now. And honestly, Windsor, my 4.5-year-old, does an amazing Larry Jones impression.
Oh, that's great.
She does an awesome laugh.
That's great.
I'm going to push back on something you said, Josh, that, and you didn't say it, but you almost said it, where like the relationship of fathers and sons is the most important. You didn't say that. You didn't go so far as to say that. I honestly think that in today's age, the relationship between father and daughter is the most important, because I'm sure you do. Sure, because I have 2 daughters. We are entering a time when like masculinity isn't as important as it once was, because we just don't have the threats that we need like strong men for that we used to. And raising girls to be incredibly strong women who can lead, I think is really important right now.
Well, there's actually some sociological evidence that one of the most relationships right now is actually between mother and son, because the mother can teach more of the soft skills that men need to adapt or don't socially or naturally have, if you want to believe in that sort of thing, to make it in today's age. So
yeah, but nobody gives up power. In the history of the world, nobody has given up power. And to say that men are going to ever like give up the power to women is flying in the face of thousands of years of evolution.
I didn't say that.
My point is, girls need to take it. Girls need to take that power from the boys. And so, yes, I'm all about mothers raising responsible sons. But I mean, I teach my wife hates this, but Winsy, when she's on the street and someone's in her way, she doesn't say, "Excuse me." She says, "Move it or lose it, Buster." And everybody laughs when she says it. I don't have a problem with it, because I'm okay with her being a little rude. I'm okay with her being a little like, get out of my way. I think all girls need to have a little bit more of the like, get out of my way, because we teach that to boys. We don't teach as much to girls. I don't have an issue with it. I don't have an issue with people being like, "You're rude," and letting my kid be like, I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Everybody's going to disagree with me on that. I'm okay with that.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is I think that actually the teaching of the soft skills to young men about how to create teams, how to foster everybody to, moving forward, I think that's also very important. And I think that's how you could become a true leader of people, not just of men.
I'm not saying we shouldn't teach soft skills to boys. Absolutely not. I completely agree with you that we should.
Well, it sounds like you are. Sounds like you hate men.
This is a hot take, Josh, but the more that I just look at men and boys in development, guys don't turn into reasonably decent human beings until they're like 25 or 26. They're just dicks before then. And for whatever reason, we hand them the world on a silver platter. And it's like, oh, this is the boy. He's going to be the leader. It's like, he hasn't earned that. Let's give it to the 2nd grader who earned it, which I think is oftentimes the girl. And I really do think that we need to actively fight against that and not just teach boys that they will inherit the world. No, you got to work for it. You got to work for it.
Well, I completely agree with you.
Great. Then we can move on.
Good. Yeah, good.
We're running pretty long here, Josh. Do you want to talk about cultural nuance and mental health?
I do. And just to say that, in the Odyssey, there was a lot that was made about Zeus's law. Zeus's law is inviolable, that if somebody comes into your home, they can just help themselves and you have to be a gracious host. That kind of flies in the face of some American ethos of rugged individualism, what's mine is mine, private property rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My point is that if you truly want to understand how somebody else is feeling, how somebody else is going to act, how somebody else's mental health is, how somebody is going to impact your mental health, you do need to understand cultural nuance. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not even saying that you have to necessarily welcome it, although I think you should. What I'm saying is you have to understand it and you have to not pretend it doesn't exist. We do this in mental health treatment all the time. We actually have a very small, although I hope it will enlarge, section of the DSM-5 that talks about cultural differences or culture-bound syndromes that are some of our anxiety and depressive conditions filtered through the societal and cultural expectations of other cultures. It's very important to understand where someone's coming from, to understand their motivations, and to understand how you are best going to get along with them. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
We could go into, I mean, we could do it. We could do hours on this topic, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And it always goes back to the whole, like, who is kind first, you know? And it's like two cultures meet and it's like, well, I'll learn about their culture if they learn about mine. It's like, somebody's got to go first. Just be the guy who goes first.
Right.
You know? And if someone doesn't act exactly the way you want, that's the way that goes, you know?
Right.
But we're not going to be kind and empathetic until somebody shows it first. So just be the person who shows it first.
Humility and curiosity are leadership superpowers.
Yeah. And as always, it's also important that you and I, recognize we're in a position where it's probably easier for us to be empathetic. We are in a position of incredible
Privilege.
Yes, we are in a position of incredible privilege. It is easier for us to be kind because people aren't tearing us down constantly. So it is easier said than done. There's no doubt about it. And even though I do believe it's the silver bullet, it is much easier said than done, and I acknowledge that.
Yeah, no one is tearing us down, except online, so comment below.
It's so funny, Josh. One of the things that you said earlier, we were talking about, like just not engaging with the people that are trying to tear you down. And one of the boundaries you said at the very beginning of this journey, which I thought was brilliant, was you were like, I'm not going to comment and respond. And I was like, great. And part of it was just like, I just don't want to get in the weeds with people who are just hating. And it's going to affect my mood. It's going to affect, all sorts of things. And I was like, I love that because that's an amazing boundary. And it sort of speaks to like, I just don't want to engage with that. Like that's great. And I don't have a problem. None of it upsets me. And I certainly like the engagement. But when someone criticizes us, I don't come back at them with like, no, you should know this, blah, blah. I try and come at it with a case of like empathy and being like, hey, tell me where that comment kind of came from, sort of thing. At the very least, thanks for watching. And it's hard sometimes, it's hard to deal with those things. But I've always appreciated that you kind of set that boundary. And I was like, I'm not going to engage with it.
Well, look, all I will say to our online critics is, I know my head looks like the tip of a penis. I get it. You don't need to keep commenting on it. It's fine.
Your head doesn't look anything like the tip of a penis. I don't know what you're talking about. By the way, have you seen pictures of the back of Mount Rushmore?
What?
There's a massive dick. There's a massive dick on the back of Mount Rushmore. Yeah,
All right, I'll have to find pictures of that.
All right, Josh, let's have a little fun. Let's get to our top 5 of the week.
Oh, Jeff, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for your top 5 every week you bring it.
Yeah, and I have not shared this one with you at all, which I think is fun. So Odysseus was obviously an adaptation. It was heavily criticized. I thought that they did a great job, but to your point earlier, it's making people kind of go back and look at some of these more classic stories. Yep. So I came up with my top 5 list of stories from the classics, from the classical era, that I think deserve a movie.
Oh, this will be great. Oh,
so these are Odysseus era stories that I think are well worth a movie because they have a universal theme, and I think that they would make a great film today.
That's awesome. All right, Jeff, do you have any honorable mentions this week?
No honorable mentions. Is just
Okay,
straight
let's
top.
get right into it. Number 5.
Okay, The Siege of Tyre.
Yes.
Okay. And I tried to keep these two historical figures that we do know. There's a lot of great stories, but I wanted to keep this to people that we know. So this is Alexander the Great, and he reaches the island city of Tyre, whose inhabitants believe their walls and surrounding sea make them untouchable. Alexander responds by ordering his soldiers to build an enormous causeway through the ocean, while Tyre's defenders invent increasingly horrifying ways to stop them. This is a siege thriller, an escalating battle between human ingenuity, obsession, impossible geography. It's a siege thriller, a lot like 300. It's got Alexander the Great. I think that would make an amazing movie.
Dude, that would be awesome. Yeah. Okay. All right. Number 4.
Okay, number 4. This, I don't know that many people know this character, but and I might be saying her name wrong, but Boudica's Rebellion.
Okay.
Boudica. I'm just going to go with Boudica.
Yep.
Correct me in the comments. After the Romans seize her kingdom, and I love this because it's a female powered story. After the Romans seize her kingdom, flog Boudica, and assault her daughters, the queen unites several British tribes and drives Rome off the island. Her forces destroy entire Roman cities before the empire finally corners her army. This has got a little bit of Braveheart in it, but it's a ferocious revenge story that transforms into a tragedy about rage, leadership, and the price that civilians pay for rebellion.
Yeah.
I think that would be an amazing movie.
Yeah. Kate Blanchett is going to kick ass in that movie. Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
Okay, number 3, again, this might not be somebody you know, but this is a Scorsese film. All right? Alcibiades, again, probably butchering the name. Alcibiades was handsome, charismatic. This is the rise and fall of Alcibiades, which is why we give it to Scorsese. He's great at the rise and fall of evil kind of characters. So he was handsome, charismatic, brilliant, reckless, possibly the most dangerous man in ancient Greece. He betrayed Athens for Sparta, betrayed Sparta for Persia, and then returned to Athens as a hero only to be betrayed himself. So this is the talented Mr. Ripley as a war epic, a charming political shapeshifter who survives every disaster except for himself. That's a great Scorsese movie. It might be a little too esoteric, but I think that one would be great.
Fabulous. Okay, number 2.
Number 2, now we're getting into people that we know, and I kind of can't believe movies haven't been made about it. Maybe they have, but they're not mainstream enough. So these are gifts for you writers out there. The assassination of Julius Caesar from Brutus's perspective. So rather than another Caesar biopic, we tell the story through Brutus, a principled man convinced that murdering his friend is the only way to save the Republic. He succeeds in killing Caesar and immediately discovers that the assassination has destroyed everything he wanted to protect. It's a political tragedy about how intelligent people justify unforgivable acts. It's a wonderful tragedy. I think that Brutus is often overlooked and he's reduced to et tu, Brute. But this was a hard decision that Brutus made. And I think his story is worthy of a movie.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So number 1.
Number 1, The Trial and Death of Socrates.
Yes.
Athens put its most irritating philosopher on trial for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. Socrates could probably save himself just by apologizing, flattering the jury, or fleeing, but instead he turns his own trial into one final lesson about truth, pride, and integrity. This is a courtroom drama where the defendant is deliberately making his own situation worse because he refuses to compromise. It's a courtroom drama. It's part of The Green Mile. The Trial and Death of Socrates would be an amazing movie. And there's a lot of great options to play Socrates. This could be Russell Crowe. I mean, it's probably good. It probably would be Russell Crowe at this stage of his life. He's gotten pretty large. But yeah, The Trial and Death of Socrates, I think, is my number 1.
Wow. That's a great list. I would watch every single one of those movies.
Yeah.
Every
Any
one.
classical stories you like, Josh, that you would also like to see?
Jeff, the one that I have always wanted to see is I want to see the fall of Rome during Nero's time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Nero could be played as a great anti-hero.
Sure, he'd have to.
There's a lot of things about Nero that I think were misunderstood, But yeah, I think that would be great. You could have epic set pieces as they destroy Rome. But it didn't happen in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. It didn't fall in a day either.
Yep.
I mean, you could talk about the crumbling of the empire. That would be great. So yeah,
Yep.
a lot to mine there. Maybe this will spark a research. People
Yeah.
are
My
seeming
friend,
to like the
my
sword
friend-
and sandals type epic.
My friend Jessica Runk and I almost did not an adaptation, but just a telling of the Vestal Virgins. So there were these women who guarded the flame of Vesta, and it was said that when the flame burned out, that would be the end of Rome. And they had power within Roman society. They had power that no other women had. I just think that would be a fantastic kind of group of people to base a story around. So
For sure.
another one that I think would be great. Anyway, Josh, that's my top 5 list. Again, as always, the list that nobody asked for, but they should. This, I think, was a good one.
Yeah, 100%. Great call.
All right, Josh, last thoughts about the Odyssey?
Well, look, I think that everyone should see the Odyssey. I think and everyone should view the story of the Odyssey as the soldier's journey. Really the soldier's journey back home to themselves, back home to their family, and that it is really an odyssey. It is an odyssey into the torment of the mind. I mean, I think that you could also make the argument that maybe those things didn't actually happen to Odysseus and his men. Maybe that was all part of the fantasy of why he was away for 10 years, but he could not return to his family after he had gone through growth, after he had gone through facing what he had done, after he had gone through and reincorporating what he was experiencing into who he was now and who he was going to be going forward. That is the true Odyssey, the true hero's journey.
That's so interesting you say that, because there's not a lot of like giants and cyclopses and sirens in the Iliad. There's a fair amount of like god involvement, of the involvement by the gods, but there's not a lot of like the fantastical storytelling that there is in the Odyssey. So it's interesting you say that like a lot of this could be sort of in his mind. I didn't know who the group was that were the massive soldiers that just slaughtered his army, but I was like, that was an awesome scene.
Yeah, I don't know who those were either. I have to go back and
did you notice that the
look at
trees were trapping the soldiers?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Man,
that was
how
great.
the hell did they shoot that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for wrapping that up, Josh. I agree. Everybody should see the Odyssey. I just thought it was great. I think it's going to win a lot of awards. Also, just a quick plug for just John Leguizamo and how phenomenal his performance was. Yeah, he was probably my favorite performance in the movie. And also Hamish Patel.
Yeah.
I want to see him in a lot more stuff. There's one episode of Station 11 that is one of my favorite episodes of television, and it heavily features him. He is really becoming one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, he was fantastic as the second in command of Odysseus's Ithacans.
Yeah, and I don't know who the actor was. I should have looked it up, but Telemachus's kind of guide, the large guy who was like his trainer and his guide. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought he did a great job. Everything he did was so subtle.
Yeah.
You're looking it
Who
up.
was that? I'm gonna look that up right now because I thought he was great too, and he was recognizable. I couldn't place him. It was Ryan Hurst.
Yeah, oh man. I don't know if you've heard about Ryan Hurst, but man, he just got screwed.
No, I don't know. I don't know about this.
So Ryan Hurst.
Oh, he was in Remember the Titan. Oh, he was.
Yes, he was
He
the
was
the
Jerry.
linebacker. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan was cast as Kronos or something. Kronos in God of War.
Kratos. I think
Kratos.
was his name. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 episodes in, he got injured. His bicep got torn. It's going to be a year recovery. They're just recasting him and refilming and firing him.
Oh no.
Yeah, which I just think is awful. I think that's a terrible, terrible decision. It's a bad look. You got to protect your actress, and especially if they're giving their heart, soul, and bicep, you got to it's the honorable thing. What you're saying is you guys aren't valuable to us, and we'll replace you with the drop of a hat. That's not the way to do it. All right. Anyway, that's the side. Thanks as always for watching and listening to Cinemental and our coverage of the Odyssey. Cinemental is produced by me, Jeff Jones, and edited by David Haverty. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we would love to hear what you would like us to cover next. You can find Dr. Jones in the metaverse or by following him on Reddit. This has been a Large and in Charge production in association with PMC Media. For Dr. Josh Jones, I am Jeff Jones, and we will see you next week.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.